I'm fired up.
You're listening to Football, Philosophy, and Rocket Science, a Cleveland Browns podcast, a show where a philosopher and a rocket scientist try to make sense of the Cleveland Browns. The Football, Philosophy, and Rocket Science podcast is a part of the Fanatical Elves Podcast Network, a part of the Fans First Sports Network. Here are your hosts, Elliot Kennel and Joel Cade.
Hey there and welcome. He's Joel. I'm Elliot. Let's get to it. I want to talk right away about a very exciting article that appeared in Dog Pound Daily. It talked about Myles Garrett not being a leader. I'm not real sure that I'm upset if Myles Garrett is not a leader. What do you think, Joel?
Well, I think before I jump in, let me at least fairly articulate what the article is saying. So the headline is, Browns' Myles Garrett really isn't the leader we'd imagine he would become. And as you would expect, everyone on Twitter reads the headline, doesn't read the article, gets mad and calls people names. That's pretty much what's going on. But the article basically comes down to this. The author, John Suchan, on Dog Pound Daily, check it out, Dog Pound Daily, John Suchan, getting a lot of Twitter feed right now, basically says, hey, here's what's been going on with Myles Garrett. It's clear that Myles Garrett is a type B personality. He leads by example and not by words, except when he opens his mouth and causes problems. And we're probably not going to expect to see anything different. He's a quiet leader type who's going to voice his grievances. So that's the article. Now, I don't know. I mean, this is who Myles Garrett is, you know? Like, I'm not expecting him to be a vocal leader. The Browns have had Anthony Walker, other people that the team itself has said they're the leader of the defense. So when the team itself says not Myles Garrett, but somebody else we just picked up off free agency is the team leader, I don't think the expectations are high for Myles Garrett to be the team leader. I mean, what do you think, Elliot? Is Myles Garrett, he's the highest paid player, should he be the team leader on defense?
No, the linebacker is usually the leader, the traffic cop, the guy who calls the signals. And the defensive end doesn't lead. I mean, it's like saying the first baseman is going to be the team leader. No, it's not. It's usually the catcher or the shortstop or the center fielder. Come on. The other thing that I think is kind of humorous is those of us who are in the business realize that we don't actually know who wrote the headline. It might have been John Suchan, or it might have been the site expert. We just don't really know. In that business, the headline is usually the discretion of the senior person. But it's all good because what you really want to do is to generate interest in the article.
Right.
Which
is different from clickbait. I think that's different from clickbait. And I think this is a good point to make to people who always claim that whatever is written on Dog Pound Daily is clickbait. It's not. Clickbait is when you put a headline out there and then you promise something in the headline and it's not delivered in the article. Yes. What is headlined here is delivered in the article, therefore it is not clickbait.
Yeah, I think what we have a legitimate beef with is if somebody starts arguing with the article but didn't actually read the article. And I think that is it's a feature of modern society that we'd like to encapsulate our thinking in a simple 5 or 6 word phrase and not actually think about things in depth. But it is a very worthwhile discussion about how much leadership is important from the best player on the team. Do we need to have philosophical leadership or leading by example, or what exactly do we want to have? And I'm not sure that it really matters that much as long as we don't get the senior guy getting the young players in trouble, taking them out to bad places, late at night and, flashing guns around and getting them in trouble with the law, stuff like that.
I'm going to agree with you, Elliot. I'm not sure that you need the highest paid player and the best player in the team to be the person the defense rallies around. I'm not sure that's important. I think what's important is the highest paid player, lives up to the money that they're getting. So if you're paying Myles Garrett an outrageous amount of money to get sacks, then Myles Garrett needs to go out and get sacks. You're not paying him to lead the team. That's why you're paying Anthony Walker, because God knows you're not paying him for any other reason. So he needs to go out there and lead the team. You know, he's the guy that the team rallies around. He sucks him up. He gets him ready. He gets him in the spot. He's the one that's vocal and tells everybody to do what they're supposed to do. You pay him for that. You don't pay Myles Garrett for that. You pay Myles Garrett to affect the quarterback.
There's a lot of talk about the coach on the field. Well, maybe there's not enough talk about the coach on the sidelines. Why don't we actually have some coaches on the sidelines that do coaching? What are they getting paid for? So I'm thinking about another thing, though, that I do want to raise is about the overall value of a player. Is there's some controversy in fandom and in the sports casting field about how valuable a defensive player actually is. And I've read a lot of things lately about how much a defensive player is worth. And a lot of people will say that a defensive player cannot be worth more than 1 point to the point spread. That kind of galls me. That why would a quarterback move the point spread by 6 points if he's injured? The point spread moves by 6 points, and a defensive player only 1. Does that make any sense?
It makes a little sense, but not a whole lot of sense. Okay, so the quarterback is in total control of the offense. You get somebody who can't control the offense, the whole offense is just going down the toilet. You take Myles Garrett out of the game, which the Browns do because they rotate players. Right? There's a drop-off, but it's not as like playing your second-string quarterback. Now, Myles Garrett is a game disruptor. He is, and the defense is different without him. I mean, look at T.J. Watt in Pittsburgh. You take him out, when he's no longer cleaning up the trash, they got nobody to clean up the trash, and teams are making plays on him. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do if they don't have him pushing a quarterback out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage so we can break the sack record. I mean, what are they going to do in Pittsburgh?
I think you could make a point that if the quarterback is out, you're unexpectedly out, let's say, that you have to change the whole game plan unexpectedly, and your whole offense is out of gear for a while until they adjust to the backup. So that there might be that point. So if your quarterback gets injured on a Friday, that's probably bad. But I think that if the defensive end is out, I think the defensive end is worth about 3 points if he's really that good. If he is like the 1, 2, or 3 best defensive ends in the NFL, they really do impact the game that much. And I don't think that replacing them with somebody that's not a really good backup player, that's got to impact the game by at least 3 points. Myles Garrett coming out and putting in the number 100 player, the 100th best player in the NFL at that position, impacts the game severely.
Yeah, I would go back to Pittsburgh and T.J. Watt. Like, they're
NFL handicappers on that point.
I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to Pittsburgh. I mean, look what happened to Pittsburgh's defense when T.J. Watt was injured.
Huge difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. And they were losing games, and they were pushing we're going to have a losing season mark. And everybody's like, oh, my gosh. And you see all the graphics on TV. I think a very good edge player can affect the game in a real way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can't believe that T.J. Watt only made 1 point worth of difference to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, no, he didn't. And
positively cannot accept that. That's nonsense.
I mean, I think there's actual charts out there of what the Steelers gave up on defense without T.J. Watt versus what they gave up with T.J. Watt.
It was crazy, and it's not just a coincidence. It's not that they played different opponents. It really is T.J. freaking Watt. He really is that good, and so is Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett was out for a couple games, and the Browns' defense was demonstrably worse without him. And even when he came back, he wasn't 100%, and I believe that impacted the course of the game. So, those guys are really that good. They really.
I want to get back on T.J. Watt here. I think Watt, in a lot of ways, is a product of the defense he plays in. Right? He comes in. He rarely. I don't say never, but he rarely gets sacks based on I'm taking on a player one-on-one, beating that player and making a sack. Most of his sacks come from he's got a free run because the offense was confused, or the quarterback scrambles because somebody up the middle or somebody on the other side has forced the quarterback to scramble, and then he's out of the pocket and TJ Watt chases him down and does what I call clean up the garbage. I have yet to see a highlight reel of all of TJ Watt's sacks when he broke the sack record, quote unquote, because I'm not believing this really happened. And I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of them of him being the closest defender to a quarterback that ran out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage and got like some sacks that way. But he's the garbage collector. And if you take out the garbage collector and your defense is designed to feed the garbage collector, then you got nobody to feed. And then your whole defense falls apart, which I think was going on in Pittsburgh.
Well, yeah, a lot of that's true, but we also tried to double team him an awful lot, and he just beats everybody up. He's just a remarkable athlete, much like Myles Garrett. They're just both incredible. Hey, I'd like to move on.
All right, so before we move on, since we're getting on to a good and awesome and terrific topic, let's take our commercial break right here. Okay. So you're listening to Football, Philosophy, and Rocket Science, and on the other side of the break, we're going to take on my favorite topic ever. And if you listen to What the Elf Was That, you will know that this is my favorite topic ever. So that's on the other side of the break. Hang on.
Do we launch?
All right, let's go.
Whenever you count down, I want to launch something, man.
So yeah, what do we should look at a little rocket and like kids' toys where you like push it down and it like flies into the air.
Yeah, I get an adrenaline surge when you count down. Hey, all right. Well, let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. You and I haven't put them together, but I believe that the Ravens are having the worst off season that they've had in many, many years. Normally, I have very great respect for that organization. I don't
music
like
to my ears, Elliot. Music to my ears.
Understand? I do not like that organization. I'm not saying that I love the Baltimore Ravens. I do not like them because of who they are, but I have respected them over the years, especially their quarterback, Lamar Jackson, who I've said since he was a rookie would be the greatest two-way threat quarterback in the history of the NFL. I have seen nothing to dissuade me from that judgment. However, I think that their approach the past few years, and especially this year, is chaotic. I think that there's a struggle in the upper echelons of ownership and the front office that is not making any sense. And I think we can prove that. I think we can look at the moves that they've made this year, and they're absolutely out of joint. If you can put up that graphic, Joel, let's take a look at what they've given up and what they're getting.
Hold on a second, Elliot. So those of you who are not watching, we now have a graphic up. That's the Baltimore Ravens free agent tracker. So we're going to discuss who left the Ravens, who the Ravens brought in. Are they better as a team for this, or are they not? So that's going to be the discussion.
Yeah, so let's take a look not only of what the names are, and but also what kind of players they're giving up and what they're getting. By the way, I listed Odell Beckham Jr. twice. Sorry about that, but they That's gave okay.
up. You got to list him twice for him to be the same effect as one player.
Yeah, once for each time that he had a ACL repair. But okay. What do they give up? The big player that they gave up was guard Ben Powers. He got a 4-year deal for $51 million. They gave up a tight end. These are classic Ravens players. An offensive lineman, a tight end, $8.2 million guaranteed. That's pretty good. They also gave up a big nose tackle, Calais Campbell, who's been just a thorn in the Browns' side for, I think he's played for about 32 years, if I'm not mistaken.
I am not sad to see him leave the AFC North.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he is about 32 years old. He's maybe on the downside of his career, but still very, very formidable. And they also gave up safety Chuck Clark, who's been a really great player for a number of years. He's been traded to the New York Jets. Still on the free agent market is cornerback Marcus Peters, who made a lot of the Pro Bowl teams, I believe. Also wide receiver Demarcus Robinson. Defensive end Justin Houston, who's been a good player.
Yeah, he was a rental.
Pardon?
He was a rental.
Yeah, okay. But, still, he's a substantial player, not nonsense. And the defensive end, Jason Pierre-Paul, was not a superstar for them, but he was in the past. Running back Kenyon Drake was, sort of had a comeback for the Ravens. I think he had over 400 yards rushing and 500 years of total offense. 500 yards from scrimmage, and wide receiver Sammy Watkins, who I can't stand. But okay, those, he didn't do that much for the Ravens. Let's face it.
Let me comment on this here. I think you're right in that you're seeing people who are typically Ravens players leave the building. You're watching offensive linemen, defensive linemen, defensive backs, right? Defensive linemen are all just leaving the Ravens. Now, admittedly, Marcus Peters probably wasn't worth the money. Kyle Fuller wasn't worth the money they were paying him. So I think they're cleaning house on some people. That Calais Campbell leaving is, to me, unexcusable if I were a Ravens fan, but I'm not. So I celebrate that one more than anything else. But Sammy Watkins, I mean, he probably knew, I'm not getting the ball here.
Let's face it, he doesn't really count. He was just sort of a frill pickup anyway.
But yeah, they've let two bigger named corners, Kyle Fuller and Marcus Peters, along with Chuck Clark, who they preferred over, I forget the moron they got from Seattle that they ended up cutting to start Chuck Clark. But they're letting that defensive back go, and the marriage between the defensive line and the defensive backfield is important. So if the defensive line can get pressure, the defensive backfield can play well. If the defensive backfield can cover, then the defensive line can get pressure. It's kind of the two sides of the same coin. And this is a team that has always been all in on defense. And it seems like, to me, this is going to be a turnover of their defense.
Yeah, they're giving up legitimate defensive players, and they're giving up some big guys on offense. So what are they getting? Okay, let's talk about what are they getting. Well, you know all about Odell Beckham Jr. fans. He played for the Browns. He's a great wide receiver, but he's had 2 knee operations on the same knee. We wish him well against everybody except for the Cleveland Browns. He is a legitimate star. Was a legitimate star. I'm not sure if he's still got it.
I would say was. I openly question why he's even considered a good wide receiver anymore. But anyway, let's move on.
Anymore. So I say was. I think, he made the great one-handed catch.
In a game he lost.
Yeah. But I'm not sure that I really value that type of catch as the wide receiver's primary attribute. I'd rather get open, dig out a pass close to the ground in freezing weather. I think that's really what I want to see. But okay, anyway, so they got Odell. They also got Nelson Aguilar, who's a good wide receiver. I think he's been able to catch the long ball when
he's not good.
But he did not have a good year for the Patriots. But there's
and he didn't have a bunch of good years with the Eagles before that. He's not good.
So yeah, okay, all right. Anyway,
he's getting $3 million. $3 million to pay wide receiver as a veteran wide receiver.
That's who they got. Look at who else they got. That's all they got. They got a cornerback, pardon me. Rock Ya-Sin. I don't know how to pronounce that name.
Rock Ya-Sin.
Thank
He
you.
was playing for the Colts.
And he's capable.
Yeah, that's about what I would say about him. He's capable.
And they got a quarterback, Josh Johnson, whom I always liked. I've been following his career since I was 5 years old in the 1960s. And
I was going to say, is that the same Josh Johnson? But it might actually be.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, Josh is immortal. He does not age. And I think he can still play quarterback, and it doesn't matter how old you are to play backup quarterback. I think that's true. Be your third string quarterback.
He's played for 14 different teams,
including the Cleveland Browns. I liked him. I didn't want to see him go. I think it's good to have continuity as your backup quarterback. If you're going to have a quarterback that's not that good, you might as well have one that has 2 years experience with your team, because that gives him an automatic advantage. So
this guy's played in the UFL, the AAF, American Alliance of Football, and the XFL.
Yeah, good for him. I'm against having inexperienced first-year quarterbacks as your only option if your number one guy goes down. I think that's stupid, and the Browns have practiced that philosophy since forever. I'm happy to have the Rocket Man as our backup quarterback again this season. But okay, I digress. That's who they're getting, wide receiver, some token effort to bolster the defense with a defensive back. And they're also getting Laquan Treadwell just for whatever reason I cannot.
So, Elliot, in case you missed it, you have to know that this wide receiver group has been touted as the best wide receiver group the Ravens had. Their coach marched out there and said this is possibly the most talented wide receiver group they have ever had. They now have 5 first-round draft picks on their team. Odell Beckham, Nelson Aguilar, Laquan Treadwell, Zay Flowers, who we'll get to in a minute, and Rashad Bateman. And they think that is like the 5 first-round draft pick wide receivers. They are super excited, and they're ecstatic about their wide receiver core. I'm looking at this wide receiver core, and I'm asking, who's going to catch the ball? Treadwell's not getting open. Aguilar doesn't get open. Beckham, we don't know what he is. He's clearly not going to be the same guy making one-handed catches.
Is probably the best of the bunch. He was a third-round pick, I think.
And I'm going to agree with you. Like, their best receiver is probably the third-round pick.
Yeah. Well, okay, they can talk about whatever they want, but what we're noticing is that, okay, they did try to address wide receiver. Okay, they're going away from their power offense, and I don't think that's a good idea. What I think actually has happened, okay, let's briefly mention that the draft, what do? They go wide receiver number 1 with Zay Flowers. We assume that that's a good move, that they have an excellent scouting department. Then they do pick up some defense in the later rounds. They traded away the second-round pick last season for Roquan Smith. I don't think that was a smart move. They would probably have been better to rely on their scouting department, drafted somebody this season, but they didn't. So I imagine that, okay, they got a linebacker, a defensive end, and a cornerback. I think those will probably be good picks, as they usually choose well.
Man, it looks like that 6th-round pick is they drafted the alphabet.
Yeah, well, so they got some guys that they can probably develop as offensive linemen eventually, but they're late-round picks, so they didn't invest in the offensive line, made some token attempt to get defensive ends. But I think that, this is a obvious decision that they're going away from their big run-heavy offense, and they're going back to the idea that, well, we're going to transition Lamar Jackson into being a pocket passer. And we're not even going to protect him with an offensive line this season. He's just got to scramble and learn how to get out of bounds and stuff.
What do they care? They have a 2nd Pro Bowl quarterback on their team.
Oh, shut up.
What do they care? One Pro Bowler goes down, we'll just bring another one in.
Oh, boy, yeah, great. And he's got 5 first-round draft picks to throw at.
Exactly.
I think
that the greatest Ravens offense ever.
Yeah, I think Eric DeCosta, I think that he really was going to be okay with letting Lamar Jackson have the franchise tag this year. I think that they were going to be the team that was going to hold the line on overspending against quarterbacks. And I think that he was probably overruled from above. I think that maybe this is just speculation on my part. Okay, I do not have inside information, but I think really their business plan all along has been, we're going to be good every year. We're not going to overspend on veterans, and especially we're not going to overspend on quarterbacks like everybody else in the NFL. We're going to be the team that bucks the trend. We will spend 1 year of Lamar Jackson, not have this gigantic mortgage of $200 million plus like everybody else has. And we'll go with a new quarterback next year that costs, $10 million or something in the draft. And we'll run the ball and get 3,000 yards again on the ground. I think that was their original business plan. And I think that they were overruled, probably by the owner, maybe by the president.
They may have gotten overruled by the analytics department, because if you just do even a little bit of analytics.
Well, yeah, who's the analytics department?
I don't know who.
Sashi Brown. That's the
okay.
Baltimore Ravens, our former general manager.
They probably got overruled by the analytics department. They're probably telling them, you can score more points if you pass the ball.
Yes,
that's throw the ball.
It's very possible that they might have either converted DaCosta on that point, or gone to the owner and pouted and gotten their way. Sashi might have gotten his way by doing that. Or it might be that Biscotti the owner might have just said, man, I'm not going to get rid of a very valuable quarterback just in order to test out this theory that quarterbacks are overpaid. The only two people who believe that are Eric DaCosta and this stupid guy in Cleveland, Elliott Kennel. Those are the only two people in the universe that believe that.
And let me jump in on this, Elliot. Let me jump in on that. I want to give you my little speech here. Lamar Jackson's been getting injured. Okay. He does he missed some games. All right. And it's because he's running for his life. Some of it is planned runs, and some of it is his offensive line breaking down, and he's running for his life. Okay. They did not help him by letting some offensive linemen go. But I can see what they're attempting to do. They're going to say, okay, let's throw the ball so our quarterback doesn't have to run for his life, and then we can keep him healthy while we're paying him an ungodly amount of money. Okay, that may be what their attempt is. The problem I see with that, although it analytically would make sense, right? The problem I see with that is that they're not going to a traditional, pro style, read the defense, make the right read, throw the football offense. They're going to that Todd Monken air raid crap that we tried here with Odell Beckham Jr., who threw a fit when he didn't get the ball from Baker Mayfield.
Well, now, wait a minute. He got the ball from Baker Mayfield with Monken as the OC. That was 2019, and Beckham had his best year for the Browns. He had 1,000 yards, but he did have to have surgery.
I don't think he had 1,000 yards.
Yes, he did.
I'm pretty sure he didn't.
Well, didn't we have two? Wait a minute. Let's just check. I think we had two 1,000.
So they're going to this air raid. Well, Elliot looks this up. They're going to this air raid thing where they're not going to ask him to read the defense. They're going to ask him to read what the receivers are doing.
1,035.
Okay, well, there you go. 2019, he got 1,000 yards. 18 or 19?
2019.
So 4 years ago, he got 1,000 yards receiving. With Todd Monken.
Nobody else was allowed to go out for a pass except for Landry and Beckham. It's true.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the case too. So, we're talking about Alabama boy time of year here. What was his name? The head coach. He was the quarterback at Alabama. Can't think of his name. Baker Mayfield loved him. Anyway, that's that disaster year. He was the head coach. And I don't know what they're going to accomplish in Baltimore, because you're asking to read receivers, which I get it, right? If you've watched Lamar Jackson play quarterback at Louisville under that pro style offense, you're probably going to conclude the exact same thing that every other NFL team concluded, which is this guy should be a wide receiver. But the Ravens said, look, we're going to put him in this specialty run offense, and we're going to use his speed as a quarterback, and we'll open receivers so he doesn't have to read defenses by using, reads based on putting defenses in a bind. So we're not going to run traditional NFL pro style schemes. And they're not going to do that now. They're not going to run traditional pro schemes now.
I don't agree with you. I think that Jackson is much better now at passing as an NFL quarterback, but I think that he's better still as the dual threat quarterback. I think that's what he does best. But I think he can be a passing quarterback, but it's not like, I don't think he's a superstar. I think he's a superstar when he's a dual threat guy.
I think it's going to be a disaster. Now, it's not going to start off as a disaster because they're going to play Houston, who's like the worst team in the NFL. And they were so bad they couldn't even lose a game that they were supposed to lose to get the first pick. So they had to get the second pick. That's how pathetic that team was. They won when they should have lost. At least the Browns knew you lose, you get the first pick. These guys couldn't figure that out. They're going to get them with a rookie quarterback on the first game of the season. So it's going to be, here's our preseason real game, first week of the season.
Yeah.
It's not going to look bad to start with. It's going to look pretty good until they get into real NFL competition, not a team full of a bunch of rookies and young players.
I have trouble visualizing a 180-pound NFL quarterback. That one.
Well,
I think
just watch the Panthers week 1. You'll see that one.
Oh wait, that's right. He's not playing. He's not playing for Houston.
No, he's playing for Carolina, but
Carolina.
That'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, so Houston will be okay.
You watch the OTAs of the Panthers, and you're like, who let that junior high kid out there? He's barely getting up to pec level of his offensive lineman. The top of his head is like the bottom of the offensive lineman's pecs, and he's out there trying to throw the football. So we'll see how that goes.
I don't believe in that.
See how that goes. I think the Ravens. I agree with you. I think when we think of Ravens football, like good Ravens football, right? And not that I like them, I hate them with everything. You think of a good running game and a tremendous defense. So they're playing defensive football, right? They're out there to say, we're going to stop you from scoring, and we're going to score enough to win. And Elliott just disappeared on us. So at that point, the Ravens have deviated from what they've been. And now they're becoming more of a, hey, let's throw the ball. Let's figure out if we can throw the ball around the yard offense, which has not traditionally been who the Ravens are. And we have Elliott back. Yeah.
Hit the wrong button. Now. Can't use the search engine and talk on TV at the same time.
All right, so we just finished up how the Ravens are kind of changing their modus operandi, to use some philosophical words.
Yeah.
There's your philosophy for the day.
Yes.
Changing their modus operandi as an organization, and it doesn't quite make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't really square with the personnel that they have.
That's exactly right. I think that they're really weakening themselves by their indecision, and they're going back and forth between whether they want to be a long ball passing team or whether they want to be a big, burly, buck the trend rushing team, or run first team, and it is going to hurt them. I think that they have not added the people that they need to add on defense, and I think the Browns have done that. The Browns have added about 4 meaningful players on defense that are replacing 4 really, not highly rated players on defense. Yeah, highly routed players.
That would be the Texans, highly routed.
Yeah. That's exactly what they were. They were routed on defense at defensive tackle last season. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that they're going to be able to push around a 335-pound guy at defensive tackle. So I think that the Browns are going to stop the run this year. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think get back to the Ravens. I think they're going to have a good defense. Some of those players that are letting go are being let go because I think their secondary has been garbage for years, and people have not really seen it. Like Marlon Humphreys is garbage. I can go on that all day long if you want, but their secondary has not been their secondary.
They've just lost too many players, and they're not.
I think there's some players in place that will kind of smooth over some of that, not replace it. They'll take a step back on defense, but they're not going to be 30s defense. I don't even think they're going to be 20s. I think they're going to be top half defense. Okay. I think their offense is just, I don't know. I think that's a bomb waiting to explode, and not in a good way.
Yeah.
I think they're confused.
Last year, they were really the number one defense in the AFC North, but I think that they've lost players. They've deliberately decided that they are going to not sign players on defense, and instead they're going to spend money on their offense and the long ball passing attack. So they are going to score more points probably. But
I'm not even sure of that.
Well, yeah, they may just be screwed up on offense.
I think they're just confused.
They may be confused.
I think they're confused. And I think the Steelers probably have the best defense in the AFC North when TJ Watt is there. And I attribute that to their scheme because they can scheme the heck out of things. And their coaches are very, very good at scheming their players into good positions. I think if you just threw them out on the field and made them play base, they're not going to be that good of a defense. But I think they're scheming very well in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a complete reversal defensively. Last season, the Browns and the Steelers were the weakest defensive teams. I think this season they will be the best defensive teams. And I think last season the Ravens and the Bengals were the best defensive teams, but they have neglected their defense this season, and the result will be that they'll give up more points. And
defensive numbers can be skewed. I mean, defensive numbers can be skewed because if you hire the Bengals and you have an offense that's on the field a lot, that's going to help your defensive numbers.
Yes.
And if you're the Ravens and you're running the ball a lot, that's going to take time off the clock, and that's going to help your defensive numbers.
Yeah, complementary football is a real thing, and we can talk about that in a future show. And I believe, actually that is responsible for the Bengals' good showing on defense to a large degree. And the Ravens are all the more impressive because they struggled on offense to a degree last season. But this year they really hurt themselves, I think, in the offseason. I
don't know. You got all the hype out there.
I don't like what the Ravens did in the offseason. I don't like it one bit.
Personally, I love it. I think it's fantastic. They just went out and hurt themselves, and they're basically confused as to who they are as a football team. If nothing else, it's a transition year for them. They're going to transition from running the ball to throwing the ball.
Transition year. They're just doing dumb stuff.
I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be nice.
They're transition year means like, oh, well, they've got a bunch of old players that are retiring. No, they're ready to go. They're ready to contend.
This is a transition from one style of football to another style of football.
From smart style to stupid style.
I agree. Personally, I agree.
For them to not be a contender. They're in the same position as Cincinnati. They just decided they wanted to self-destruct this season. I really like the Steelers, or I should say respect the Steelers. They have done a lot of smart things on defense. I think they're going to be really tough this season.
Well, I think
watch out for the Steelers.
We get into the Steelers next week. We can do Steelers hate next week.
All right, let's do the Steelers next week. I think
the Steelers hate.
We don't hear a lot about the Steelers because they don't have a glamour guy at quarterback, but they are badasses on defense. I think.
They got the trash collector. All right, man. I'm going
to don't underestimate the Steelers, Browns fan. We do this every season, and I can't stand it. Don't underestimate.
If you want to beat the Steelers, just go out there, and I'm not going to say this.
Be overconfident about Pittsburgh. Never.
No, I agree with you. You can never be overconfident about Pittsburgh. All right, well, that's all we got today. So come back next week, and you can listen to us talk about Pittsburgh.
Thank you for listening to Football, Philosophy, and Rocket Science, a Cleveland Browns podcast. Please like, subscribe, and tell all your friends to give a listen. You can follow Joel on Twitter at The Left Guard and Elliot at The Village Elliot.